Hi everyone, George here from Mini Madness. Today we're going to talk a little bit about sway bars, specifically the rear sway bar on the Mini Cooper and Mini Cooper S. The rear sway bars that came on the R53 and R56 versions usually came in two sizes, either 16mm bar thickness or 17mm bar thickness, depending on what model car you have. Mostly the 17mm bars came on Mini Cooper S's. So what we do in our approach to this whole thing is to put on a large rear sway bar only. And we usually do a 22mm size for that. So the reason why we do a 22mm size is that's kind of just about the biggest one you can really fit back there realistically. And what you can do is with the 3 adjustment holes on each end of the sway bar, you can actually adjust and fine tune how it makes the car react. Now, a lot of people say, what's the reason for a rear sway bar? Why would I only want to do one sway bar instead of the front one as well? Well, essentially the Mini has a big problem with understeer. And what that means is when you go into a tight turn, a tight corner, the car tends to want to plow forward instead of actually turning. So for example, if you go to a racetrack and do a lapping day, what will end up happening is you'll really just wear down the front tires incredibly fast. And that's because you're going into a lot of tight turns at high speed and the rear end of the car just simply isn't rotating. So what the rear sway bar does is it allows that rear end to kind of rotate or float, let's say. And what that allows the car to do is allows the front wheels to actually track and go where we want them to go. So let's take a look at these sway bars and see what the differences are between the stock one and what we have today. Okay, so here we are with the factory sway bar that's on a Mini Cooper S. It is a 17mm solid bar with one attachment point at the end. So this is standard fare on most Mini Cooper S's out there today. On the market there's also what some people are referring to as a street sway bar, and a lot of people try to refer to this one as a race sway bar. We don't kind of buy into that whole race versus street sway bar concept. We think it's really just not accurate and kind of misinformation out there. In our opinion, the street sway bar that people are selling out there is only 2mm larger than this. So it goes from a 17mm to a 19. So we're talking 2mm larger than this. That's basically nothing. So really, in our opinion, doesn't do much at all, if anything. And if you ever wanted to get more aggressive with it, you simply can't because the bar size just simply isn't there. It just isn't thick enough to do that. So what we do is we say, go with the 22mm sway bar, and with the adjustment points on it, it gives you the ability to kind of dumb that sway bar down. So you'll always have enough bar there for whatever needs you're going to do, whether it's competition racing, lapping days, autocrossing, or street driving. This 22mm bar pretty much does everything. So in this case, one size does kind of fit all. So try and stay away from that whole sway bar misnomer about a street bar versus a race bar, which is larger. They're really, in our opinion, there's only one bar, and that's a 22mm size. We really kind of strongly believe in that. That's why we only sell one bar. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at our 22mm sway bar and some of the key differences versus other bars on the market today. One of the key differences you'll notice on our bar is that it has forged ends to it. What forging means basically is that this end of the bar here with the 3 adjustment points is actually part of the actual bar itself. It's not welded on. So what they do is they take a large press and they stamp this flat, and they simply punch or drill the holes through it for the adjustment points. So what's nice about this is you get a solid one-piece bar. It's kind of like a nice forged wheel as opposed to a 2-piece wheel. The benefits you get out of this are just longevity. So it can go through a lot and really never ever break because it's one solid piece. Whereas a lot of the other bars out there that have welded ends on them, we've seen some cracking and some failures there over time. So that's why we really prefer a forged end one-piece bar as opposed to some of the other 3-piece bars. The other thing you'll notice on our bar is it has these nice welded stops on there. What that does is it prevents the bar from kind of moving side to side. It keeps it centered at all times. It's a really nice feature. And another feature of our bar, which is a little different from some of the others out there, is the bushing that we use. We use a polyurethane bushing. A lot of the bars out there have polyurethane bushings. What's interesting about ours is it actually has these grooves on the inside. I don't know if you can see that or not. But the grooves on the inside of this piece right here help keep the grease in place. So your frequency of pulling this apart to have to re-grease it is many, many years down the road. So it's not like every year you're going to have to pull these off and re-grease them. It's maybe every 3 to 5 years. Depending on use and kind of conditions. So that's another key feature of this sway bar versus some of the others. I'll also talk about really quickly what these 3 adjustment points mean on the sway bar. So some people are always, lots of people are always asking, well, what setting do I put this bar in when I put it on the car? Well, the way this works is the sway bar, in its position, this would be at the farthest most point of the car facing backwards. So this is basically the back end of the car, and think of this as maybe the front end of the car. So the way it works is wherever this sway bar link is actually mounted dictates how this bar is going to make the car react. The forwardmost hole is going to be your stiffest setting. It's going to make the car rotate the most. The middle setting is obviously lesser, and the final setting is even lesser than that. So what we recommend to most people is start with the middle setting, see how you like how the car reacts. If it seems like it's too twitchy, you know you can go backwards one notch to lessen that, or if it seems like it's not rotating enough, you know you can go forward a notch. That's essentially how we like to tell people to set the car up when they put this bar on for the first time and they're not sure where they want to set it. Start with the middle position and see what it gets you. A lot of people leave it there and never touch it again. Anyway, that's the lowdown on the 3 adjustment points.
Now, I have a question for you. What about the difference here? There's manufacturers that have aluminum brackets for the polyurethane bushings.
Oh, good point. There is one company out there that makes aluminum brackets instead of these steel ones. You know, I don't think there's really any performance difference either way. I think the steel one is a little probably more robust than the aluminum one. There's a lot of stresses going on back there. Those aluminum bushings have been out for not too terribly long, and so I think time will tell if they fail or not. But I don't think there's any reason to go with one versus the other based on the type of bracket that you use to hold the bushing in place. These are nice zinc-plated steel bushings. They won't rust, and they're super strong. I've never had one break to date. So that's the story behind those. Okay, so today what we're going to do is install the rear sway bar that we just talked about. So we're going to go through the process of doing that. You need some simple tools to do it. One of the most important things to do with this sway bar, what makes it a kind of do-it-yourself project, is that you just, like I said, use basic tools, but you do have to have 2 jack stands and a jack in order to get the entire back end of the car off the ground. So you have to get the entire back end of the car off the ground, remove both wheels and tires, and that way you basically unload the sway bar. The sway bar is in a neutral position. Otherwise, if you leave one wheel on, you're going to be twisting the sway bar, and trying to get the linkage out on one side versus the other is going to be kind of a nightmare. It just doesn't work. So you have to unload the entire back end of all of its weight in order to go ahead and do the rear sway bar install. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started on removing the factory sway bar and then putting on the new one. So what we're going to do first is get in here and we're going to remove the sway bar link from the top of the existing sway bar. So we're going to use a 16mm wrench, ratcheting wrench, and go ahead and break that loose. It's going to be kind of tight here, so you know, just want to kind of wreck your hands as it breaks free. But you can see as you start turning it, without putting an Allen key in the center, the whole link shaft starts turning. So you put an Allen key in the center there. It's going to keep that from rotating. And you can actually take the nut off. So we're going to take that out. Now obviously you can see here that there's no shock and strut. We have taken those out as well. And that's part of this video, which you've probably just watched, but we haven't mentioned that to start with the sway bar install, but you do have to remove both shocks to do this. So once we've gotten that out, let that kind of hang free and kind of push back there. Once again, just take the nut and screw it right back on the end of the sway bar link. Don't lose it that way. Then we're going to do is, once again, we're going to use air power here, but you know, most people might just use an actual wrench and socket. A long 13 does the trick to take off the actual factory sway bar bushing. So we're going to put that on there and get started. The short little bolts, just these little guys, 2 of them. Okay, you can just lift that up and pop that bushing off. The factory uses rubber bushings, not polyurethane, so it's also nice and squishy and doesn't provide much good feedback. So there's the factory bushing, nice and small. I'm going to set that aside. Then the next step, what we'll do is we'll lower the subframe of the car, the rear subframe that is. And what we're going to do with that is with a 16mm socket and some extensions, you can actually get under there and remove those too. So that's what we're going to do, but obviously we're going to use the air tools again for time's sake. Okay. So right here's the first one, if you can see that. That's the first bolt you're going to remove. And the second one is right up under here. I'm not sure if you can see that.